People I remember at the beginning were like, when I was doing my daily reports, they were like, "But this is going to be over in 30 days, right?" I'm like, don't count on it. Don't count on it. I mean, you look at history, right? Operation Wetback and the other ones. They deported 3 million people. They lasted years. Yeah, I think we're at the beginning of it. We're not even like in the middle of it. This is going to go on for a while.
Hello and welcome to Why Is This Happening with me, your host, Chris Hayes. Back in June, early June, we saw the first kind of massive deployment of federal agents to a U.S. city for the purposes of aggressive immigration enforcement, street raids, people being pulled over while they're walking down the street or in a parking lot, or a landscaper literally with a gardening implement in his hands, right? Cutting grass, people in the Home Depot, car washers while they're washing cars. I mean, this kind of just indiscriminate catch-all, often very aggressive, sometimes downright violent approach that has now moved around the country. We've seen images day after day of this in Chicago after the head of the Border Patrol, who was first in Los Angeles, went to Chicago. There's news out today that the Bovino, the head of Border Patrol, is going to go to Charlotte. But all of this model of aggressive and sometimes violent enforcement against immigrants was kind of piloted in Los Angeles and hasn't stopped happening there. So this has continued in Los Angeles. It has been expanded to other cities. And that first few weeks in Los Angeles in some ways was kind of a turning point for this country in many ways. And we're seeing that model now exported. I thought it'd be a good time as we're watching this play out in Chicago and watching it play out possibly next in Charlotte, and a lot of fear in the city of New York that this is coming to New York next as soon as the mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani is sworn in on January 1st. That's the expectation. I thought I'd talk to one of the journalists who's done the best job of chronicling and documenting what's been happening in Los Angeles. And it's from a publication that you might not anticipate or expect. Publication's called LA Taco. It was founded in 2006 as a food site and a food community. In 2018, they relaunched and kept their emphasis on food and culture, but also as a news site. And they have become one of the most incredible resources for anyone trying to follow what's happening with immigration raids in Los Angeles. They've been doing incredible reporting and aggregation of the observations of folks who are sending in multimedia and videos and firsthand accounts. Memo Torres is a multimedia journalist and director of engagement in LA Taco. He hosts The Daily Memo, a podcast, and he's been doing a lot of the chronicling there. Memo, it's great to have you in the program.
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me on, and thanks for bringing some light back to Los Angeles. Appreciate that.
Yeah, you're an Angelino, right?
Yes, born and raised.
Born and raised. And tell me a little bit about yourself, like who your people are, what part of Los Angeles you're from, what your sort of community milieu was like growing up in Los Angeles.
Yeah, so I grew up on the west side. I grew up in Inglewood, Culver City, Playa Vista, Venice areas. I grew up with a family of gardeners. I'm technically third-generation gardeners, so I know what it's like to be out there gardening the mansions or the hotels of Los Angeles. I did go to UC Berkeley. I was fortunate enough to get a good education and come back. And I did landscaping for about 15 years before I got involved in journalism here at LA Taco.
That's wild. Tell me about that experience. I mean, did you do that after Berkeley?
Yeah. After Berkeley,
that must have been a while. That's a very fascinating, like moving up and down the decks of the Titanic kind of experience from like coming from folks that are doing landscaping, going to UC Berkeley, going back to landscaping.
Yeah, definitely. I'm the Leonardo DiCaprio of this world.
Yeah,
man.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a great example. Yeah, man. I've mixed with the upper echelons down to like the people cleaning everybody's yards. I've had like 25 different jobs. I've experienced all kinds of people's communities. Yeah, I've been around, man.
What did you learn about the world of folks living at the margins of immigration law while you were in the landscaping business for 15 years?
Well, I grew up with them, so it's what did I learn? I mean, I learned work ethic. I learned how to wake up early, how to make sure you're there for your family. I worked out to like not complain about the situations. I learned how to find humor in the worst of times. I've learned how to pedal through the struggle and really just accept it as a kind of a part of life, is that life is always going to try to knock you down and you're always just going to have to fight through the mud.
One of the things, I don't want to overly romanticize this, but I had an experience that was incredibly formative for me. Was I worked in a bakery when I was in high school, and it was, all the bakers were Mexican guys from Puebla. Every Mexican in New York is from Puebla, basically, within a rounding error, more or less. And I would hang out with them. I would sometimes stay through the night and bake with them. And one of the things that I found kind of incredible about that experience is that they work so hard and so much that the workplace was their social life, in the sense of like finding camaraderie and humor and all this stuff was really important, because like they didn't have a lot of time off. Like this was kind of what they did. So to the extent that you could enjoy that time and talk a little trash or like make jokes or play pranks on people, that was really important, because like there really wasn't downtime. They basically slept and worked 7 days a week.
Yeah, I mean, I remember we'd always, like on Fridays, they'd all just bring a 12-pack of Modelos at the end of work on Fridays. And I remember there was one specific moment where one guy was just, getting a little drunk and happy. We're having a carne asada at the yard. And he's like, I spend more time with you guys than I do with my family.
Right.
Like, that was very real. I was like, and everybody was like, yeah, we do. That camaraderie, the relationships they build with each other is real.
LA also, obviously, like, I mean, this is true of Chicago, but I think LA even more so. Like, it, as much as any city in the country, I'd say it's impossible to separate what LA is from Chicano culture. Obviously, LA Taco is sort of embedded in that. Like, of all the places for these raids to start, it seems to me there's this fundamental conceptual lie at the heart of the Stephen Miller, Donald Trump vision, which is that there's this neat division between like Americans and the others, those bad other people, and that they're going to come in and they're going to redraw this line that's been erased. And the experience of daily life in any big city in America, and in fact, in most of America, not even big cities, but particularly in Los Angeles, like that line is nonsense. It's all mixed up. How has the arrival of these federal officials, what has it done to the city in terms of its understanding of itself?
I think it goes back to even before. This year has been drastic for Los Angeles, and it's changed people's perception even way before ICE arrived here, because we got to remember, we went through these worst fires that eliminated Palisades and Altadena. And I think the city was made very well aware that the people that stepped up were the day laborers, were the immigrants, were the food vendors, were the taco trucks. Nobody asked them to. They just showed up with their trucks, they showed up with their food, and they just knew they had to go and help. And all these communities really saw how much these immigrants cared, not only for their city, but for these people that are part of LA. And a lot of these people are like their clients, right? Or their bosses, and they're going to their neighborhoods.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
These are people, they're going back to communities where their nannies are raising the children, they're taking care of the children. Even during the fires, people were still showing up to work. Nobody warned them that, like, hey, Palisades is closed, there's a fire. People were still showing up to work and finding out, like, oh, wow, everything's on fire. I got to get out of here. So because the way immigrants came through during that time, people really just kind of like felt that connection and realized that they really are a part of the community. They didn't show up just because, they saw people in need of help, which was a nice idea, but because these are also their people. These are people they work with at their jobs, their clients, So that connection for me became very strong during that. And then you have the ICE raids happening the other way. So I feel like in Los Angeles, there's a lot of people who kind of empathize with the immigrant community in the same way of like, now they're being attacked. What can they do? So there's a lot of white allies, so to say, coming out to support, standing at Home Depots, trying to be rapid responders, trying to figure out how they can support. If anything, for me, these tragic moments have unified Los Angeles a lot better between the immigrant communities and the people that, are not immigrants.
Yeah, that's really inspiring to hear. It's exactly what I've heard from. I have a lot of friends in Chicago because I live there. I got my start as a journalist there, and I still have people there. And I've heard a very, very similar story. Like, if it's been brutal and horrific, but there is real solidarity that's getting stitched together of folks that do occupy the same community. Like your kid, like you drop your kid off at school and you're watching a parent at your kid's school get taken by an immigration agent. Like that's not some remote thing. That's like right there.
No, your kids' friends, parents, all of a sudden your kids' friends, they're like, I'm hearing stories about how kids all of a sudden are turning in their homeworks, their friends are like a little traumatized and they're talking about their other friends because they learned that their dad got picked up or their mom got picked up, and the kids are scared. Everybody right now in Los Angeles, and I'm going to stitch together what I've heard from 3 different communities, but they're all basically living in fear. They're all living, going to school, and working in fear. And that's the situation for a lot of these people.
Let's start back to LA Taco was a food site. It relaunched and has always now since 2018 been like a news site and a culture site. And I really didn't know. I don't live in LA, so I don't have a ton of reason to read LA Taco, but started reading it because someone pointed to your coverage of these raids. So back in June. You talk me through a little bit of like what those first few days, June 7th, June 8th of Border Patrol showing up, making this sort of big splash, protests, huge national stories, what your sort of experience of that was like and how you at LA Taco kind of came to understand what was happening in front of you.
Yeah, it was Friday, June 6th, and we're all getting ready to like go home and plan out where we're going to eat tacos for our next food article or, what we're going to cover. And I remember when the June 6th raid happened at the apparel company in downtown LA, it was drastic. And I remember all of us saw the news and started seeing the reports and the rumors. People were calling us. And all of us instinctually, without needing to hear anything, we all reacted. Reporter Alexis Olivia Ray was the first one on the scene. He just booked it down there. Javier Cabral is already like trying to reach all of us. And by the time he got in contact with all of us, we're like, we're covering it. We're here. For us, it was a very like instinctual reaction to just cover it. Nobody needed to tell us that this is what you need to do. They're literally going after like, communities that we cover. So for us, there was no thought process. It was just all instinctual reaction. And it's been like that since that day on.
How much, one of the difficulties in immigration reporting is sometimes it doesn't get the attention it should get until, say, Trump is doing something, and then it kind of submerges back underneath. And sometimes people will point to continuities rather than discontinuities. Back during child separation, the conditions of detention along the southern border, particularly, like they've always been pretty bad. They were bad under Obama. They were worse under Trump, but people would point out like this has been bad for a while. My sense, and I've been also reporting on immigration, is that like the style of this enforcement is a genuine rupture, like a genuine discontinuity from what came before. But I don't know Los Angeles very well, and I've not reported. What would you say about that?
So it's evolved. It's definitely disruptive. It's funny. Like I've been doing some panels. I've been speaking to people, and one of the things I've been hearing from people is it's very it's not as bad. The mayor of Los Angeles said this on Monday last week at a town hall that the raids aren't as bad as they used to be, and I feel like that's alarming because, in my opinion, and I keep track of them, we went from having like 50 to 60 people being abducted weekly to now it's like a couple of weeks ago it was getting to 80 and 90. Now in the last couple of weeks it's over 100, 105, right. 110.
So are they doing it? Happening. Are they doing it more efficiently but less like showily?
Yeah. So I say where Bovino goes, the show goes. Okay, he loves to have the cameras on him. He loves to create chaos like that. That's his like priority over there. That's his job, is to create this scene of lawlessness and rioters so that Trump can have his talking points and create this mass scene of chaos, throwing tear gas, throwing flashbangs, pepper bullets. That's all Bovino. That's all of that. Now, not to say that agents here in Los Angeles aren't as violent, but the situation is different. Now, I tell people in Los Angeles, this all happened when Bovino was here. For the first month or two, Los Angeles was chaos, just like you were seeing in Chicago. Now, there's some differences, right? Chicago's communities are a little tighter. The streets are smaller. They're more like you got little village, while Los Angeles is more spread out. You know, when you raid a Home Depot, they're on a major boulevard by a freeway so they can get in, get out. You're not really attacking the communities per se. You're attacking these centers where these car washes are.
Yeah.
You know, so you got to think of the differences in the geography and why it appears different in Chicago than it does in Los Angeles. You also got to remember that Los Angeles is a few months ahead of the raids. We were the first ones. We were the testing ground. So everything Bovino's doing in Chicago, he did here. And so now that he's gone, the strategies have changed. And with the rapid responders who are doing the real work out in the streets, the community watch members and the rapid response groups following Border Patrol, keeping tabs on their locations, warning the community when they're sighted somewhere, like letting the car washes know. There's been this cat and mouse game of rapid responders alerting people and foiling these raids when Border Patrol shows up. And Border Patrol getting frustrated and then just going down the street and taking somebody who's on a bike or whoever, because they just need to get somebody. It's almost like they can't go back without having
quota.
Somebody
I mean, I think they have
Yeah.
numbers. I mean, I really do. I think we've got all the evidence suggests that there are numerical targets they're trying to hit, and that is what's guiding the behavior.
It is. It's what's motivating it. And so now what you're seeing is like there's been some back and forth between strategies between Border Patrol and rapid responders. There's this cat and mouse game, like a chess match almost. And so the recent newest strategy we're seeing from Border Patrol is that now they're, instead of like going sporadically and raiding different parts of Los Angeles, like there'll be 10, 12 sightings and they took maybe 10, 12 people. Instead of doing that, they're going and focusing all their energy in like one little community, one little hub, and just going through the streets and grabbing people off the streets, grabbing the street vendors, the daytime street vendors. So now their numbers are like in a single day, we're seeing 20 to 30 people getting taken instead of 10, which is in part because now they know that if you're trying to do the car washes, they're trying to the Home Depots, that the rapid responders are ahead of them. This way, if they're getting people off the street, there's nobody to warn the people on the street.
Let's talk a little bit about, so there's a bunch of stuff there I want to unpack. So first, let's just to go back like to the sort of original point, like when ICE and Border Patrol and all the Homeland Security agencies came to Los Angeles, that represented something new, right, for the communities there.
Yeah.
I mean,
we had never seen that before.
Right. So I just wanted to like establish that first, which is like, this is new, like, and even like the day they show up, like all of a sudden there's a new ball game. You know, this kind of thing hasn't happened before. It's now happening. Can you talk to me a little bit about what you're reporting and the folks at your news organization have learned about like the different constellation of these agencies? Because a lot of times people just say ICE as a kind of coverall, but there's Homeland Security Intelligence, HSI, there's Customs and Border Patrol, which is run by Bovino, there's ICE. How have you seen these different agencies operate? Are there things that you've noticed about their differences, et cetera?
Yeah, I think, you're totally right. I think everybody, news media, all over the place, people on the street, uses ICE as a catch-all term. But ICE is a specific agency. We have so many agencies. We have U.S. Border Patrol, and then within U.S. Border Patrol, you have different teams. You have the SRT teams, the Special Response Team. They're the ones that are fully tactical. They look like they're going to Afghanistan. They're going to go to war with the cartel. Those are those guys with the rifles.
That's Custom and Border Patrol SRT team.
Exactly.
And yeah,
so
they're the ones that really truly look like they're about to go take out bin Laden. Like that's basically
exactly.
The vibe.
And then they're riding around in vans and they're big trolls. They think they're in Call of Duty warfare. They're out there trolling responders, like even in vans, telling them like, come get the candy, come get candy. Like they're just total like, immature guys with these big old weapons. They're not taking any of this seriously. Then they're backup for Border Patrol agents that are actually doing the roving, the profiling, and the snatching out the streets. Then you have ICE. So at the very beginning, you saw DEA, ATF, all the federal agencies, FBI, marshals. They were like they all showed up at the same time. But then that's all kind of been the differentiated now. So now what ICE is doing like targeted enforcement where they're going to people's homes or their job places that have some issue with their court documents. Either their asylum case got dismissed, they missed a court appointment, they didn't dot an I or cross a T somewhere in their paperwork. So ICE is going after specific people that are already in the system. Border Patrol is the ones that are going out there and creating the chaos. They're the
like
ones
street
roving.
raid, that just like
The street
sheer,
raids.
hey, you guy, you look a little dark.
Yes.
What's your deal? Where were you born? I mean, I'm literally like, they don't say that, but they say like, where were you born to people that are just walking down the street.
Right. And that's all Border Patrol. And I remember at the beginning, we'd ask DHS about, did ICE do this? Or like, no, ICE didn't do this. But they wouldn't tell us it was Border Patrol either.
Right. Like it was just like a sort of, yes, a disingenuous denial, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to, very early on, we had to like know that we have to know these different agencies, right? HSI, Homeland Security Investigations. It also causes a lot of fear in the communities. So every day, me and my team, me, Izzy, Aisha, we always looking at videos every single day. Because people send us all these videos and people are freaked out. They don't know the difference. So they'll see undercover police or sheriffs doing an operation, and they'll be like, this is ICE. ICE is here. And we have to verify that and call the police stations or call DHS and be like, is this you guys or not? We've gotten better at tracking license plates and recognizing the figures. You know, I mean, we've got nicknames for some of these guys already. But yeah, we have to verify every single instance, but the community doesn't know the difference. They're afraid to go to the metro. They're afraid to take the bus because there's always Homeland Security at the metro, but it's not ICE and it's not Border Patrol. They're part of TSA, who their job is to supervise public transit. So there's this whole thing of fear now with people.
Interesting. Well,
so now when they see instances, and sorry to cut you off, but
no, go ahead.
Like, there was this one great story. I was at a restaurant and I'm doing a food review at a restaurant because we're still doing food reviews on the side. right. But the restaurant owner tells me how sheriff came in one day. He took the order. He turned around to the kitchen and the staff were gone because they thought that the green uniforms were Border Patrol.
Wow.
So that's the kind of situation people are living in here. Any type of law enforcement, they don't even take a chance. They're not going to be like, is it or is it not? They just book it.
You know, I want to stay on this point because last night on the television show, I had a guy who recently won a sheriff's race in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, against a Republican MAGA-aligned sheriff who was very excited to partner with ICE on deportation through this program called 287G, which is a longstanding one in which basically local law enforcement can kind of deputize for immigration enforcement. And he voluntarily affirmatively sought this out. The race kind of was waged basically on this terrain with the Democratic challenger saying this is a bad idea. I had him on the show and he made this argument, and he's not at all like a lefty guy. He's very kind of centrist dude, which has been the argument that city police chiefs have made in city after city for the 20 years that I've been covering this, is that it's not like this idea of a sanctuary city is some like necessarily like bleeding heart compassionate idea. That if you're policing Los Angeles County, you need to be able to interact with folks that are immigrants and have different immigration statuses. They are witnesses, victims, the people around. If you create the conditions in which they will talk to no law enforcement whatsoever, it's going to be more dangerous. People are not going to get reported. They're not going to call things in. You're not going to have witnesses who come into court to testify to secure a homicide conviction. Like, it is pretty disastrous. And it sounds like what I'm hearing from you and what I've heard from Chicago is that like, that is precisely what's being produced now.
Yes, definitely. People are, I mean, there was a moment where I think Trump, this propaganda was like, crime is down because there's less crime being reported. It's like, well, no, it's because people are afraid to report anything. I was talking to a lawyer who specifically works with women who are victims of domestic violence and sexual abuse from their partners. A lot of these women are immigrants or have, conditional immigration status or questionable documented status. And she was telling me how, like, so many of these women are afraid to go and talk to police or report anything because their husbands are threatening them to deport them.
Yeah.
So you have these kind of situations. A lot of the times, too, you have neighborhoods now where, like, crime is being committed, but they don't want to call police. And the way the police in Los Angeles, specifically LAPD, has reacted to ICE and community members, when they call LAPD, LAPD comes with batons, comes with shields, and then they unleash their aggressiveness towards the community members and protect ICE to make sure ICE can get out of like the situation when, you know, community comes out to like, you know, confront them about them taking a neighbor.
Right. So in these situations that we've seen replayed, we saw a bunch in Los Angeles, we've seen in Chicago. So if ICE or Border Patrol, and you were saying largely Border Patrol, has some interaction in the middle of a public place, and then community members come out to confront them, and we should say, when we say confront, like verbally, like to yell at them and say, they're not fighting with them. They're saying, get out of Los Angeles. We don't want you here, sometimes in more colorful language, and they're recording them. Now, those confrontations that happen, those aren't they're a combination, I understand, of organic and organized, right? Like, explain to me how those come about, because there's this kind of rapid response community that's grown up where people are networked and they're sending themselves texts and they're on distribution lists, and then there are also just bystanders. So how does that kind of happen when you have these moments in public where a bunch of people come out?
So you'll have the organic. A lot of it now is organic, right? Just people just come out. They hear somebody screaming, literally somebody screaming, help me, help me. They come outside and they see their neighbor getting taken, or the street vendor from the corner getting taken, somebody at a gas station. So they come out and they come out with their cameras, and everybody comes out like, what are you guys doing? Get out of our neighborhood. Leave him alone. Do you have a warrant? What's your badge numbers? You know, all the ruckus you usually hear with all of this. Those are the very organic ones. And then if enough people come out, you know, these guys are like to play victim and being like, oh, we're being attacked, which is not true. And then they'll call LAPD, and LAPD will come out, and then like they'll go push the crowd away, which that creates a big distrust. Now, like if there was distrust with LAPD already, now there's a lot more distrust.
So
now these communities are definitely.
They've been relying on LAPD as sort of crowd control to bail them out of these situations that get very tense.
Yes. They call it traffic control, is what they call it. They're out there for traffic control. But then you have the situations with responders. Now, the responders here in Los Angeles, like I said, we're months ahead of the game here because it's gotten very sophisticated. They know not to intervene. They will follow the vehicles around. They will document them. They'll get as much footage as they can. And that's pissing off a lot of these agents. So what you're seeing now in Los Angeles, and it's escalating every week, where they're constantly pulling over and pulling their guns out. There was a situation in Santa Ana where one of the agents pulled over on a side corner, waited for this car that was following them to pull over, and wasn't following them close, but just kind of sneakily pulled over and then got out of the car and just pointed a gun at them. Two girls that were just following them around.
And this is pointing a gun at the observers. These are just people who are observing them.
Exactly. There was another one last week where they're in Santa Ana. They were raiding a Home Depot. They were grabbing somebody from the Chevron station next to the Home Depot. And there was another one in the parking lot, but in that Chevron station, they're literally pointing these like grenade launchers, like to a woman's face, like point blank in their face. There's another situation where they were taking this woman's husband, and they were trying to put him in the car, and you know, he's trying to it's kind of funny because his whole body comes out of the window yelling at his wife, like, you know, help, and she's trying to like open the door to get him out. Agent grabs her by the neck, tosses her to the ground, pulls out a gun, points a gun at her, community coming out, and he's pointing a gun at every single person. Like, these chaotic situations are still happening. There's no tear gas, there's no smoke, but the violence and the aggressions is still here. And then just the other day, this weekend in Fullerton, this man pulled over in the middle of an intersection, gets out of his car, no masks, no uniforms, no insignia or anything.
Nothing,
just gets a gun out. Just like you or me right now.
Okay.
Pulls out a gun in the middle of an intersection and points it at a car that he thought was following them. And she wasn't. She wasn't even an observer. And then Fullerton PD happened to be there. They pulled over, and then they pull a gun out on the guy. And
oh, my God.
Later only to learn that the guy was actually an agent, and he identified himself. So you wonder,
wait. Let me make sure I track this. You have an immigration agent from either ICE or CBP or one of those, right?
Yeah.
He's driving around Fullerton, which is a town in Los Angeles, right?
Yes, in Orange County.
In Orange County. So he's driving around. He thinks he's being followed by one of these observers.
Right.
Like the other person who did this, he pulls over to pull a gun on the observer because he's pissed off or had it or wants to intimidate them. He's wrong. So he's now just pointing a gun in an intersection in Fullerton in broad daylight at a random person. And then the Fullerton cops see this and are like, this dude is going to shoot this lady. And they pull their guns on him.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
there-
this is
there
a
was an
recipe
observer-
for like complete disaster.
There was an observer following him, but he pulled a gun on somebody else.
Oh, the wrong
behind
one.
him.
I see.
Yeah, so it's just it's a recipe for disaster. And then we just had in Ontario, there was a 24-year-old citizen who saw three people getting detained in a car, and they were pulled over at a bus stop, a school bus stop. So as he was driving by, he saw them getting like ICE agents getting there. So he kind of reversed to tell them, hey, there's kids coming. They're about to go to school. They're on their way. This is the bus stop. Can you guys move? Guy freaks out, pulls out a gun and shoots at him, lodges a bullet in his shoulder. The guy calls 911, goes to his home, which is right around the corner. His wife takes him to the hospital, and HSI agents grab him from the hospital, detain him all day, take him to the detention center.
After they shot him?
Released him like a day later on Halloween night, still with the bullet in his shoulder.
What?
And he still has a bullet in his shoulder.
This is an American citizen who was backing up to tell them you're in the bus stop and kids are going to come, and got shot for that.
Got shot for that. Yeah. There's still crazy situations happening in Los Angeles, and they don't make the way because Bovino's making sure he keeps all the attention on himself.
What wasn't there also them driving off with a toddler?
That just happened the other day, right here up the street from us at Cypress Park Home Depot. So this guy was so crazy. I forget about so many of these events. They raided the Cypress Park Home Depot. It was on election night on Tuesday. And that day they went everywhere. There was about 20 raids all over Los Angeles. They went bonkers at
And they're still doing the same MO. Like they show up at Home Depots and car washes and all this stuff. They get out. There's some of them that are in the gear, some of them not. And they just start. And they're just grabbing people, right? There's not like you were saying, like ICE is like, we have a name of a person who has, who's out of status and they have an address, or we're in the courtroom and we're in there. This is literally just, they don't know who they are. They have no idea who the people are. They are literally just on site deploying and grabbing people that look,
it's
Latino to
it's
them.
Literally,
basically.
exactly. It's literally grab now, verify later.
Right.
And there's several instances where like people are getting dropped off on the sidewalk a mile, 2-3 miles down the road after they verify that they're actually a citizen or a permanent resident.
Okay.
But going back to this Home Depot incident, they showed up and they accused this guy of throwing rocks at them. None of the rocks actually hit him. They pin his vehicle. He has a toddler, like a 1 to 2-year-old toddler in the car seat in the back of his car. When they ran the car from behind, they drag him out of the car. They arrest him. He's a U.S. citizen. They get in the car, and in the whole time, the SRT team, the tactical guys, are arguing with the regular Border Patrol guys about who's going to get in the car. So you see this infighting happening. It's chaotic. There's like 30 people coming out. They get in the car, and they drive away with the toddler. They find the mom later. She picks up the toddler from the detention center with a bruise on its face.
No.
Yeah, baby had a bruise on its face. So, and this guy ended up not getting charged for throwing rocks at them. He got charged for being in possession of a gun that was previously owned by somebody in New York who had a domestic violence charge on him. And now they're saying that they arrested him for being in possession of this gun, yet they didn't find the gun until after they arrested him. So make it make sense.
Where, I mean, it is crazy. It's so out of control. What have you learned about one of the things I've tracked in Chicago is, they have this Broadview facility, which is the facility where they're bringing a lot of people. There's also a thing happening in New York where they're basically storing. They've basically converted a kind of federal court building into essentially a kind of makeshift detention center, which is not designed to be. When people get grabbed, where do they get taken, and how do their loved ones, or employers, or friends, or anyone, family, find them?
So that's the struggle, right? They used to have the ICE, the detainee tracker site, which now they don't really keep up. They've stopped keeping that up months ago. So it really takes them having to go to a lawyer, and a lawyer who already has the connections, knows who to call. And it's never immediate. Usually it takes about, if they're lucky, they find them the same day, or they get a call the same day. If they're lucky. Usually it takes about a day or two for them to locate them and find that they've already been sent to either Adelanto, which is a detention facility closest to here, or another one in Mojave Desert, sometimes down in San Diego. And then after that, like we have the situation where there's a kid, Benjamin, He got picked up in August, like right the week where high school was about to start. He was about to start his senior year in high school. He's walking his dog. ICE agents grab him from a residential neighborhood. This kid doesn't only knows the United States. He was brought here as a child. And this woman sees it and she runs after the dog. They take the kids and only to like walk around with this dog until the mom finally comes out looking for her son and be like, that's my son's dog. And she finds out that his son got taken. Fast forward a couple months later, he's at the Adelanto Detention Center, and then they moved him to Texas without telling the family. They didn't notify the family. So now this poor kid is in a Texas detention center being held there, and he's been in detention now for about 3 months.
He's still in detention.
He's still in detention. Hasn't been let go.
And this is, I don't know his particulars, but someone should be DACA eligible, depending on when he came, what cohort he's in. But someone who came was brought, who did not, to just be clear, did not come of their own volition. They were brought here as a child.
Yeah, we had the first death in Adelanto facility, Ismael Uribe Ayala.
The first death, you said.
Yeah, that was the first death this year, to be clear, because they've had several deaths. But this year, the first death at Adelanto facility is a 39-year-old Ismael Uribe Ayala, which is one what our team reported on. He went in there fine. He had been here for since he was 4. He lost his DACA status for a DUI, and then he got arrested. He was a manager at a car wash for 15 years. And he ended up getting like an abscess in his butt cheek and ended up getting out of control. They never treated him. They never gave him anything. They ended up attending to the Victorville Hospital where he died and just went in healthy and died. And you have all these situations now where like we had another detention death of an old man, a grandpa. They told the family like, yeah, he's at Adelanto. He's been there for 10 days. But they wouldn't let him speak to him. And then finally, when they did call him to let him know where he was at, you know what? He wasn't actually here for 10 days. He's been at the hospital since he's been detained. And they go to visit him. They find him with broken teeth, a bloody skull, broken ribs, just died immediately, like the next day after they had notified the family. And they noticed that there's a lot of other people that are shackled to their beds in there. So there's abuses going on at these detention facilities and medical neglect. Sorry, I just dropped a lot on you.
No, I know. I'm sort of I'm processing it all. I'm also thinking, we're going to have to, obviously, I'm sure we will go, and at the end of this podcast, we'll have comments from DHS. We'll reach out to them and get their responses, obviously, to see what they say about these people that were in their custody. So where do you think this is going now? I mean, one of the things you've said is it's gotten more efficient. There's a kind of cat and mouse game between the responders, and they're getting the people doing the raids are getting a little quicker. They're finding ways to kind of get in and out because Bovino's in Chicago, and he is obviously very focused on kind of creating propaganda content. That's like a huge part of what he does. There's less of that, but the actual numbers being taken are ticking up. Where do you see this going now?
I think so. If Bovino's going to Charlotte better get ready for the show. They better get ready for tear gas. They better learn from the responders in Los Angeles. They better learn from how Chicago reacted. Like I said, every city has a different geographical layout, which creates different situations. But Bovino will come and create chaos in Charlotte. Be ready for that. And they want that chaos. They want you to be disruptive. They want you to be angry because that plays into their hand, right? And Chicago, once he leaves Chicago's going to start doing what they're doing right now in LA. Play this cat and mouse game between responders and community watch members, where they're going to try to follow them or be ahead of them and all that stuff. Right now, Border Patrol has a new strategy that's highly effective, and responders are kind of like trying to figure out how to adapt to them. So we'll figure out how responders adapt to them now. But this is just going to keep happening. Bovino's going to start going around, creating the chaos, and his teams are going to be adapting to every city. So expect about 50 to 100 agents to stay behind in Chicago and still raiding the cities over there while he goes and makes an impact in Charlotte.
What is your understanding of why he wants the show? I mean, we can't, peer into his mind. I mean, basically, I think there's a few things going on. So one is that they're constantly obsessed with the show. I mean, from Trump on down, right? They right. It's like they do a big summit with Putin and they do a flyover and they do a literal red carpet and like nothing actually comes out of the summit. They just want to show them doing the summit, right? There's a lot of that in Trump world. Like you're performing like a cheap B movie version of what one conceives of. This is what a summit looks like. Like this is what a big presidential speech looks like. This is what an immigration raid looks like. So there's partly that. But then it strikes me there's something more insidious, which is they want to make life miserable for people here because they want to change their calculations about whether they want to be here. And they recognize, and I think I'd like to hear you weigh in on this. If you look at the math, they can't get everybody. Like they don't have the numbers to do this at the scale that they say they're going to do it at. I mean, even with the huge amount of money they got in the big bill that passed, the level of manpower that would be required and the just sheer hours and the processing capacity, and they're going to build up. Like there's no question about that. They're looking to, but that part of what they want to do is it's like a force multiplier. If every one raid is broadcast to 1,000 people who aren't involved in the raid, you create the psychological conditions that maybe you can just scare people into leaving.
That's exactly what they're trying to do. That's exactly what it is. They want people to be afraid, and people are. I mean, you look at the situations at the detention centers, like I was just talking about earlier. A lot of these people, because people need to understand, when they grab these folks, they don't just deport them. They get the option to self-deport or be detained, right? And they can stay detained, and you're seeing about 80 to 90% of these folks choosing to remain in detention. Why? Because they have their families here.
Because their home is here.
Their home is here. They've been here. They've built businesses 10, 15, 20 years. They don't have anything to go back to in another country. So they're choosing to stay here. They're not self-deporting.
I mean, at some level, that's just to take a second with that. Like in a perverse way, there's almost something. I hate to use this. In a perverse way, there's almost something kind of patriotic about it. Like, right. The idea, like this is their home. You're sacrificing for your home, where you're given an option, which is like you can just walk away and not be in detention, but it means leaving this country that you have made your home, and you're willing to bite the bullet to go into a facility that you know is going to be dangerous, where the conditions are going to be bad, where you may face health risks, and you don't have your freedom because you're so tied to this place.
Take it a step further back. You know what these people went through to get here?
Yeah.
A lot of them were refugees. They had to leave threats on their lives, on their families, being kidnapped, the struggle just to get to the border and then to get through the border. Trump makes it seem like they're just pouring over, like they're just walking through. That is complete bullshit. The amount of work and sacrifice all these people had to do to get in here and then start a life for their children. You'd think that if they did all that, they're just going to be ready and quit and self-deport. They're not. I mean, these are tough people. These are people that have been through it, and they've established themselves here, and there's nothing more that they want than to be American.
Given that this is an interesting conundrum, I think, and I'd like to hear you speak about it because it's something I think about. So given that they are intentionally trying to create conditions of fear and propaganda, how do you think about your own reporting? Because it's like you don't want to give them what they want, but also we have a responsibility to chronicle what they're doing. And that's now the reason I'm asking you this is true about so much that Trump does, right? Like there's so much where he's trying to put on a show to get attention, but also what he's doing is genuinely fucked up and newsworthy. And we're constantly making that balance. So how do you think about it?
Yeah, no, man, I think about that a lot. I'm like, in a way, I'm also kind of playing into his hand by showing every incident, reporting on everything that's happening, because that's what he wants. And I think that's maybe why they've let us slide. You know, they go after LA Times reporter Brittany Mejia. They went after Jacob Soboroff, right? They go after different news agencies for their reporting on it and always calling them fake and all that stuff. I think we're like the only newsroom here that is reporting on every single raid and the horrors of them. And we're pretty good about keeping it tight and keeping it truthful.
Yeah,
But
that's
it's
important.
it's very conflicting for me because it's like, in a way, that's what they want, but in a way, people also need to hear this.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a double-edged sword for me. I think the way I do it with my daily memo recap is a way to kind of balance it both, because I don't show the full video. I don't show all the trauma porn. I don't show like the horrors. I do tell them that it did happen, show a little clip of it so they get an idea of it, but also kind of summarize it and recap it and kind of explain the day to people in that sense. So people understand that it's happening, but don't have to like fully absorb everything. I'm the one that does all the absorbing of all that trauma.
And how has that affected you?
I mean, it's made me more resilient. It's made me stronger. I'm lucky. I'm a son of immigrants who taught me to fight through it, work through it. It doesn't matter what it is. I mean, I've worked through the toughest situations in my life. So this, to me, I'm ready for it and I'm good with it. Little whiskey and a cigarette at night does a trick.
Doctor recommended. One thing that I've heard from, and again, the reason I keep referencing in Chicago is just because this is also happening there in a sort of lag, but also I'm very close to that city and know a lot of people, is like, it also, the point you're making before about solidarity and this sense, of stitching certain parts of the city together. Like, there's so much pride people have in their city. This is definitely true in Chicago. It's true in Los Angeles, true in New York. Sure, it's true in Charlotte, right? Like that pride is like an 11 out of 10 right now in Chicago. Like, people are just like, it, in some ways has sort of inspired people to be grateful for what they have and to feel even more deeply connected to this place. And how special it is to have a place where people are coming from different backgrounds and going to school together and working together and living side by side. Has that happened in Los Angeles too?
I think, I think I want to say that the unity is definitely there. The pride is confusing. I think people definitely have pride in Los Angeles. I don't want to say people are not proud of Los Angeles, but we've had a lot of situations that have brought up mixed feelings with people. Mm-hmm. For one, with our politicians, we look at Chicago's politicians, the mayor, and everybody turns to our politicians and local city council members. And not to bash everybody, everybody's trying to do their part. But like, the city doesn't understand how politics works. Look to these politicians and be like, why can't you be like them? Why can't we have somebody speak like them, right? And then you also have the situation where we just had the Dodgers, right? That's like a huge cultural element of Los Angeles. That's the pride of the city right now. And then you find out that the owner, Mark Walter, is invested in the GEO prisons through Guggenheim, through his thing, and also in Palantir, the surveillance technology that ICE is using to track all the immigration. He's literally profiting off of these ICE raids. And you're just like, so people are conflicted. People want to cheer for the Dodgers. They want to cheer for the World Series. But then the owner's profiting off of them attacking our community. So you literally have people wearing Dodger jerseys over shirts that say ICE out of LA. And recognizing that. So it's a very conflicted time for LA and its pride and its culture, and that has a lot to do with the way the politicians are responding. The fact with our team, the Dodgers, that we all love so much, just won the World Series, yet the owner is profiting off all of this.
Do you think they have the endurance to see this out? I mean, that to me is the big question, because Trump's attention span is short, like he's all over the place. He's flitting, and like Stephen Miller's is not, which is part of the problem here. Like there's a real plan there. But then there's also part of me that wonders, they have they've got tens of billions of dollars coming their way, and they're doing a big recruitment push. But is this the new reality, do you think, for Los Angeles for the next few years?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. People, I remember at the beginning, were like, when I was doing my daily reports, they were like, but this is going to be over in 30 days, right? I'm like, don't count on it. Don't count on it. I mean, you look at history, right? Operation Wetback and the other ones. They deported 3 million people. They lasted years. Yeah, I think we're at the beginning of it. We're not even like in the middle of it. This is going to go on for a while.
Memo Torres is a multimedia journalist and director of engagement at LA Taco, an independent news outlet in Los Angeles that I really recommend you check out. if you're going to Los Angeles or live in Los Angeles and want to learn about the incredible food scene, it's also amazing resource for that. Alongside the fantastic reporting he's been doing, you can check out his podcast, The Daily Memo. Memo, thank you, man. That was amazing. Appreciate it.
Hey, thank you, Chris. I appreciate you shining a light back on LA.
All right, so we reached out to DHS for comment about the incidents that Memo mentioned in our conversation. DHS spokesperson Tricia McLaughlin sent back a statement defending agents' actions in the case of incidents at Ontario, Fullerton, and Cypress Park that we discussed, where U.S. citizens said agents threatened or detained them. McLaughlin said those citizens threatened the agents and that, quote, the violence must end towards DHS officials. They've previously defended their detention of undocumented immigrants, including those discussed, as necessary to deport them. On the death of Ismael Ayala Uribe, after he was taken into custody at the Adelanto detention facility, ICE said in a statement his cause of death is under investigation. The agency, quote, remains committed to ensuring all those in its custody reside in safe, secure, and humane environments. DHS spokesperson McLaughlin added in a separate statement that detainees in custody receive, and I quote her here, the best health care that many aliens have received in their entire lives. And on the death of Gabriel Garcia Aviles, that's the grandfather that Memo mentioned, ICE blamed the death on alcohol withdrawal syndrome. The family contests that.